There is a defeat that seemed humiliating. Yet it ignited an eternal fire in human memory. A battle where the few stood against the countless. Where the blood of fallen warriors became an immortal symbol. Sparta, they lost the war. Yet their defeat resounded like a 1,000-year victory. Could it be that a civilization achieves immortality not through triumph, but through the legends of its downfall? In the heart of ancient Greece, at a time when the world was carved by city-states and rivalries, Sparta stood apart. It was no ordinary polis. While Athens built temples to wisdom and art, Sparta shaped flesh and spirit into instruments of war. From the first breath of a Spartan child, life was measured by its worth in battle. Newborns were inspected beneath the cold eyes of elders. The strong were nurtured, the weak abandoned. Discipline was not a choice, it was destiny. Sparta's roots reached into myth. They traced their lineage to Heracles, son of Zeus, claiming that the blood of heroes pulsed within their veins. They believed themselves heirs of the Dorians, a stern and unyielding people, chosen to embody order, austerity, and power. Their land, Laconia, gave birth to the word laconic, speech as sharp and sparse as their way of life. To speak less, to act more, to fight until breath was gone. This was the Spartan creed. From youth, boys were taken into the agoge, the brutal system of training that stripped away weakness and forged unity. Hunger was a teacher, pain was a mentor, obedience was the path to survival. They learned to steal, but more importantly, not to be caught. They learned that the needs of the city outweighed the needs of the self. A Spartan existed not for glory, but for the survival of the whole. Women, too, were raised differently than in other lands, strong, outspoken, commanding of respect. In Sparta, women bore warriors, managed estates, and stood as pillars of resilience. This strange, disciplined society would be called upon to face the greatest empire the ancient world had ever seen, Persia. When King Xerxes marched westward with an army that legends claimed numbered in the millions, Greece trembled. The Persian Empire stretched across 3 continents, bound by roads, tribute, and fear. Against this colossus, the Greek city-states were fragile, disunited, often more eager to fight each other than the foreign invader. But Sparta did not bend. Their king, Leonidas, became the embodiment of their ethos. When the Persians demanded that Sparta surrender their weapons, Leonidas answered with 2 words, "Molin labe, come and take them." It was not merely defiance, it was prophecy. The stage was Thermopylae, the hot gates, a narrow pass where mountains squeezed the road to the sea. There, in 480 BCE, Leonidas and a mere 300 Spartans stood alongside a few thousand allies. They knew they could not win. They did not march to victory, they marched to memory. For days, they held back the tidal wave of Persia, shield against shield, spear against arrow. The Spartans embodied the philosophy of less is more. Their phalanx formation, interlocked shields and overlapping spears, turned the bottleneck into a fortress. To the Persians, accustomed to vast cavalry charges and archers stretching across horizons, this unyielding wall of bronze was maddening. But betrayal slithered through the mountains. A local Greek revealed a hidden path that allowed Persian forces to encircle the defenders. Leonidas, realizing the inevitable, dismissed most of the allies. He and his 300 Spartans remained, along with a few hundred Thebans and Thespians who chose death over retreat. In that final stand, arrows darkened the sky, spears shattered, swords clashed until they broke in bloodied hands. When steel failed, Spartans fought with fists, teeth, and defiance itself. And then, silence. The Spartans lay dead, their bodies pierced, their shields splintered. Thermopylae was lost. Xerxes claimed the pass, and the road to Athens lay open. Militarily, it was defeat, a crushing, undeniable defeat. But in memory, Thermopylae became something else. News of the stand spread like fire through Greece. The sacrifice of the 300 was not seen as a loss, it was seen as a signal. Sparta had shown that courage could withstand terror, that unity could rise from ashes. The defeat galvanized the fractured city-states. Athens would rally its fleet at Salamis. United Greek armies would crush Persia at Plataea. Xerxes, who came as a conqueror, would retreat as a humiliated shadow. Thermopylae was the paradox, a defeat that secured victory. The Spartans had lost their lives, but won immortality. The world now whispered their names. Even their enemies, the Persians, could not erase their legend. The words carved into the stone near the battlefield still echo today. Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie. Yet glory is a double-edged sword. The triumph of memory fed Sparta's pride. Once celebrated as saviors of Greece, they soon turned their gaze inward, against Athens. Against their own kin, the Peloponnesian War erupted, a decades-long conflict of Greek against Greek. Sparta, with Persian gold and ruthless discipline, eventually brought Athens to its knees. But in victory, they sowed their own ruin. For their system, so rigid and unbending, was designed for war, not for peace. They did not know how to build an empire of minds, only one of spears. While Athens experimented with democracy, theater, philosophy, and art, Sparta remained a society frozen in militaristic ritual. Their victories came at the cost of innovation. Their strength was also their cage. The Helots, the enslaved underclass that sustained Spartan life, far outnumbered their masters. Fear of rebellion was constant. To maintain dominance, Spartans institutionalized cruelty. Each year, young warriors were sent to kill Helots in secret, a ritualized terror meant to keep the population in check. The very system that had once ensured their survival now made them brittle. Morally and practically, for how long can a society stand when it builds itself upon the endless suppression of others? When Thebes rose to power, its general Epaminondas shattered the myth of Spartan invincibility at Leuctra. There, the Spartan phalanx broke. Their soldiers, once thought unstoppable, fell like any other men. Later, Macedonia under Philip and his son Alexander swept across Greece. Sparta, once the terror of the Aegean, became irrelevant, bypassed by empires that dreamed far larger than the Peloponnesus. Their warriors still trained, their kings still spoke proudly. But the world had moved on. And yet, even in decline, the shadow of Sparta lengthened. Rome admired them as paragons of discipline, shaping legions in the image of phalanxes. Renaissance thinkers praised their simplicity as a model of civic virtue. Modern revolutions borrowed their defiance. In our own era, the figure of the Spartan warrior, helmet gleaming, cloak of crimson, shield unbroken, still appears on posters, in films, in the rhetoric of leaders who invoke sacrifice and unity against overwhelming odds. This is the paradox that lingers. Sparta the city died, its power crumbled, its way of life disappeared. But Sparta the symbol never faded. Defeat at Thermopylae became victory in eternity. Their loss became a myth that outlived their triumphs. And it asks us, across millennia, an unsettling question. What truly grants a civilization immortality? Is it the lands it conquers, the empires it rules, the wealth it amasses? Or is it the story it leaves behind, even if that story is one of blood, loss, and defiance? Perhaps it is not triumph that shapes eternity, but the willingness to stand, unyielding, in the face of certain doom. Thermopylae reminds us that defeat is not always the end. It can be the beginning of a legend that no empire, no passage of time, can erase. So when we remember Sparta, we do not remember their conquest of Athens, nor their dominance of Greece, nor their final decline into obscurity. We remember a mountain pass, a narrow road, a last stand against the tide of history. We remember that even in failure, they carved their names into eternity. And we are left to wonder, in our own age, of propaganda and division, of wars both visible and unseen, which defeats of today will one day be remembered as victories of memory?